Hi, this is guitarist Steve, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Bargain Bin Gear. And in particular, I want to talk to you about tube amps. And if you've been following my channel, and if you haven't, you should subscribe to follow my channel, because a while ago I had the intent of purchasing two orange CR60C combo amps, solid state amps, and usually I play tube amps, so I tried to use a solid state and was kind of disappointed, quite frankly, and actually returned them. Okay, so I'm definitely set on tube amps. Really work better for me, for me have a better tone or louder. Now, of course, there's good and bad tube amps and, solid state amps as well. So I'm not knocking either one. In fact, one of my favorite amps is the Albion amp, which is no longer made, but those were solid state. Now, they had a tube version too, but I really like the solid state version of those. So the things I've encountered so far with tube amps, though, is one, the maintenance on them. Replacing tubes is kind of like replacing light bulbs. They're going to go out, and you will have to replace them if you own a tube amp. And I think, quite frankly, I almost think that they should, when they ship a tube amp, when you buy a tube amp, you should get an extra set of tubes included. Now, I had a Fender Super Champ X2. Only has 3 tubes, and it's a little 15-watt amp, but I love those amps. However, one took a tumble. In other words, it fell over, and boom, all of a sudden had this terrible sound, distortion on the clean channel, didn't sound right, losing power and so on. And so I took a look, and sure enough, one of the power tubes was damaged. Now, what they recommend is when a power tube goes, that you have to buy a matched set. In other words, it's got 2 power tubes, so you have to replace both. Right? That wasn't too bad. It was about $30 for these. And these are JJ's 6V6S, and I can show them to you here. So I went ahead and ordered another set because I didn't have a set on hand. So that amp was out of commission for, I'd say, probably about, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. At least, that was kind of disappointing. Anyway, here you go. This is one of the power tubes, right? The 6V6S. And once this, if this glass breaks, the tube's shot. You can't use it. And just to be safe, I used a match set, which is recommended. Now, the nice thing about these is that they have a notch, so you can only put them in one way. And that makes things a lot simpler, right? Because you don't want to bend these pins. And on a power tube, it's kind of hard to do because they're pretty big. But let me show you another one. Because we had a Black Star head, and I was getting some noise and things. Kind of was weird. It kind of sounded like a distant thunderstorm coming out of the speaker at all times. Right? And I go, man, what is that? And so I thought, oh, well, it might be a bad tube. Right? And it's originally my friend's amp, and he had a set of tubes for it. And these are Electro Harmonics EL84 power tubes. Looks like this. Now notice one thing here. There's a space, okay, in between the pins here, okay? But there's no notch, right? And that makes it a little harder to install correctly without bending the pins, okay? For a power tube, anyway. So, you know, we did the whole test thing, you know, testing the tubes, and sure enough, one of them didn't sound quite right. You know, you use a wooden chopstick and you can tap on the tube, and if it's microphonic or that kind of thing, you know, that could cause that kind of noise. But that didn't solve it. So I went ahead and replaced the preamp tubes as well. Right, so we got the boxes here. I don't know where the old ones are. There we go. There. Right, it looks very much like a power tube. Right, same kind of thing though, no notch, and these little pins can be bent easily. There's a little space though that shows you how to, you know, insert them properly. It's kind of a pain. It's not too bad, you know. You don't want to force things too much, because you could bend a pin if you don't have it aligned correctly. Okay, and so anyway, we tried replacing that as well, and guess what? Nope. That didn't solve the problem either. And this is a brand new amp. You know, I think my friend got it in October. So I don't know if it has a bad output transformer or something like that. Don't know, you know. But here we replaced all the tubes in it, and that didn't solve the problem. Whereas when I replaced the tubes in the X2, you know, fixed it right away. So basically, welcome to the world of tube amp maintenance. So the Black Star luckily is under warranty, you know, so I have to basically get it to a warranty service center and see if it's, you know, a bad power supply or something like that. I mean, it powers up and plays and everything, just that noise, you know, and that shouldn't be there. And so I guess, just from my experience, having an extra set of tubes is essential, you know, and that's the problem, is that all these amps, you know, use different kinds of tubes, so you've got to have those on hand. And with power tubes, they have to be matched sets, right? And that gets expensive, because you can't just buy one tube. You have to buy the matched set to replace all the power tubes, you know. Now, luckily, usually, you know, on a lot of amps, it's only 2 power tubes, you know, and the little preamp tubes are a lot less expensive, you know. And I'll tell you, coming from solid state and modeling and things, you know, it's quite hard to get used to the fact that they will go out eventually, you know, and will need to be replaced. Like I said, you know, very much like a light bulb. And when one does go down, it's you know, I think emotionally very jarring, right? Because all of a sudden your amp's, you know, unusable. It's like it's broken, you know, but only temporarily broken. Except for in the case of the Black Star, and we'll see if that was maybe a manufacturer defect or something was damaged. Maybe a tube went out and damaged something else. You know, could be a cold solder joint. Who knows? Definitely make a video on that and find out, especially when you get the amp back, and hopefully that issue will have been solved on there. So that's the trade-off, I guess. Now I have to admit though, I've got HT Club 40s tube amps. And it's been a couple of years, and just no issues. I haven't even had to change out tubes or anything. And so far so good. And I know eventually, that the tubes will have to be replaced on there. And it's usually, noise issues, crackling, popping, and those kinds of things, on there. So that's a definite expense, but I'll tell you what, from having the experience of having one go down and not having the tubes available to you, and that you have to order them, unless you want to pay for next day delivery, which I would think most people wouldn't. It's a good idea to keep a set on hand. Definitely. But the trade-off is the sound, and this is the thing. If it's solid state or modeling, it just doesn't give you the same feel, or the same tone, or the same power. A great example is the Orange 60C was 60 watts, solid state. Well, that translated out to about maybe 15 watts tube. The little Fender X2s kept up with the Orange super easily. Because just 2 watts are louder than solid state watts. That's the thing. And the fact that, on the Orange, it was at 60 watts solid state, but don't forget, the volume, past 4 or 5, and it starts to break up, so you can't get a clean sound. So you're just taking your 60 watt down even further. That's why I really wasn't, very happy with the amp. And so far I haven't found anything that really replaces the tube sound. And I tell you, just until a few years ago, I was playing a modeling type thing, and I guess didn't really know any better, I guess. When I switched to tube amps, it made a huge difference, and even changed the way I play altogether. So in that sense, very interesting. And I'll tell you, if you're a guitarist out there and you've been playing solid state, bass katana or whatever, and you're a fairly new guitarist, and you haven't tried a tube amp, I highly recommend it. It doesn't have to be a tremendously expensive tube amp, but just a small tube amp. And you'll definitely learn the differences pretty quickly, as far as the feel of it, the sound of it as well, the warmth of it, and I'll tell you, when I was younger, I went to a Rush concert, and there was a band there that opened up for them. I'm afraid I don't recall their name. But they had this rack mount system called the Rocktone Pro Gap, I think it was. Right? And this was solid state all the way. And, man, it sounded thin and brittle. And a terrible sound, quite frankly. And then when they came out with big tube heads and 4x12 cabinets, you know, of Rush, I guess at the time, made a gigantic difference in sound, you know. Yeah, so, and I always keep that in mind whenever I switch between the solid state and tube, you know. On the other hand, for high gain things, you know, a lot of times, I find it's easier to get, you know, that kind of metal, you know, distorted lead type stuff out of modelers and solid state. This is a lot harder to do on a tube amp, you know. A lot more expensive, too. Okay, anyway. So, we're going to take this little Black Star head that's having these noise issues and have it checked out and see, you know, if it's under warranty repair, if they'll go ahead and replace whatever needs to be fixed there, you know, if it's an output transformer or power supply or, you know, resistor that's got burned or who knows, or a bad cap or something. I don't know. We'll see. But it wasn't the tube, surprisingly. I thought that would have fixed it. You know, it's this weird kind of, yeah. Like I mentioned before, this kind of weird thunderstorm sound, you know. Strange. So we'll see if if they'll honor the warranty and discover what the problem is and, you know, fix it or replace the components that need to be fixed on there. But I learned my lesson, I'll tell you what, with my little X2, and that's the first time, really, that I've ever had a tube amp fail, surprisingly. You know? And not from just going out, you know, because it was old or something, but because it fell over, you know. And I was talking to a friend of mine, he has a Marshall DSL-40, and he took it over to a friend's house, had it standing up in the car, and the same kind of deal. It fell over and broke the power tubes, and he had to replace them as well. You know, so they're a little fragile, really. And definitely, you know, having an extra set around will save you a lot of hassle in the long run. Alright. See you next time. Okay. Bye.